I'm Lorena Ortiz Ramirez. I'm from Mexico City, and I will be your MC in this stage. So next, we have another interesting. Are you ready, Nathan? Yeah? Okay. Another interesting project that has been around like for 2 years now, and I'm talking about maps. I don't know how many of you are traveling around the world, but I can guess that many of you have. So we are talking about a project called BTC Maps, and the founder, it's Nathan Day.
Hi, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Nathan Day. I'm one of the co-founders of BTC Map. So we're here today to talk about merchant adoption and some of the work we're doing with the map. So first up, a bit of humor here. We're trying to get the meme spedden into the Bitcoin vocabulary. So this is not just hodling, this is spedden in as well. So we'll have some fun along the way for sure. All right, so let's talk about Satoshi and why he is Team Spedden. So right back to the white paper, you can see it was an electronic cash system, not an electronic savings system. And so even Satoshi himself envisaged this being used as a utility. So Bitcoin as a utility, something that you use every day rather than just save Bitcoin. So a quote here from one of the early Bitcoin talk forums where Satoshi is envisaging using QR codes to buy stuff with. So this is a reality now on the ground, certainly here in El Salvador. So before I get onto the map, I just want to talk briefly around the 3 functions of money. So if you're all Bitcoiners in the room, you'll probably be familiar with this. So medium of exchange, store of value, unit of account. So these things happen in order, and so you can't become a medium of exchange before you have first become a store of value. So that's where we've been today, really. Up until this point, perhaps, with the advent of Lightning, we're now moving into this store of value, medium of exchange phase of Bitcoin adoption. So this is the Spedden phase that we're hopefully helping out with here at BTC Maps. And then finally, unit of account, and that's when we win, right? So this is hyper-Bitcoinization. Everyone's thinking in sats or bits, depending on your view on that. People sometimes push back on spending Bitcoin. I think historically so. But a friend of mine, Ben Duvall, who's here actually at the conference, we were over dinner once, and he's also tweeted out about this about a year or so ago. But the opportunity of holding fiat is exactly equal to the opportunity cost of spending Bitcoin. So if you're holding fiat, you're short Bitcoin anyway. So by all means, spend and replace, but don't feel like, oh, I bought those sats for such a low price 5 years ago, I'm not going to spend those. It's a false logic, really, when you think about it. Another friend of mine who's actually here at the conference as well, Ben Gunn, you can find him on Nostr. He abandoned Twitter about 6 months ago. You can't eat sats and you can't live in a Bitcoin. So we have this wonderful invention. We need to be using it as a utility. So we're not saying don't replace the sats you spend. We're saying absolutely spend those sats and then go right ahead and replenish those. And don't think about the cost of those sats at acquisition. So let's move on to the map now. We've just done a bit of the background. So our mission, BTC Map, and we're only just over a year old actually. So threefold really to drive merchant adoption. So one of the reasons we started the map is that I couldn't find anywhere that would show me globally places where we could spend sats. To enable circular economies, so I just spent the weekend up in Berlin, and those guys are heavy users of the map. They have 70 odd merchants up there at the moment, and it's really helping with adoption, because you can go to different merchants around the community and you can show the map of all of the merchants. So we're not doing the hard work on the ground that the circular economies are doing, but hopefully we're providing some tooling that helps them along their way. And just to normalize Bitcoin use. So for a long time, particularly with NIMs on the internet, Bitcoin, some Bitcoiners were not comfortable about talking about Bitcoin. So we want to try and normalize the use of Bitcoin and people talking about it. So every time I go into a merchant, wherever in the world, even if I know what the answer is going to be, I will always say cash or Bitcoin, and just normalize that in everyday language. So what was the problem we were solving? Before BTC Map, there was no real single place to go to find places to spend sats. Some of the existing solutions were just really crappy, so a lot focused on ATMs only and not merchants. Most involved crypto, so there was handoff to shitcoin exchanges, etc., so that wasn't great either. And most of them were proprietary as well, so we don't like that. And the main problem is that creating and maintaining these large data sets, so we've got almost 10,000 merchants now on BTC Map, is hard. So how do we solve the problem? First up, Bitcoin-only map. Second up, open source software, but crucially open source data as well. So all of the data that's held within BTC Map, certainly the merchant data, we're using OpenStreetMaps as our geospatial database effectively. For those that don't know about OpenStreetMaps, it's effectively the Wikipedia for maps. So anybody can use the data that and the communities around the world curate. You don't even have to ask permission. It's just there. You go and take it, go and use it, go and build upon it. So that was a key difference with what we're doing here at BTC Maps. And then the community angle as well. So because we didn't want a centralized data store of merchants, we have created communities, and I'll get on and show those later in the presentation. And what we do is we effectively push the responsibility for the maintenance of the merchant data down to the communities around the world. So I think we've got about 350 or so communities. And when people complain, which they do occasionally, they'll open the map and they'll go to a place that is out of date, or they no longer accept Bitcoin or whatever. We always say, well, it's not our data, it's actually your data. So if the data in your own backyard is not up to date, that's not our fault as a kind of platform provider. It's the fault of the communities for not keeping that data up to date. So we're trying to decentralize the maintenance of the merchant data. And it's working quite well so far. So the combination of 2 and 3 enable us to scale. And of course, layer 0, it's Bitcoiners making this happen on the ground. We're just providing some tools to help folk achieve that. Okay, so just a quick checkpoint on how the progress we've made in probably, 14 months now. So I was at Baltic Honey Badger last year, and I was on the front row. I was trying to find a solution for the problem, and I made this very crappy website using mid-90s HTML skills in Notepad. I'm not a coder. I play in code, but I'm not a professional coder. And very quickly, we attracted a number of contributors, some of which are here in the room today. So Salvo over here as the lead iOS dev. But we went from this, which was awful, to what we feel is a decent set of applications now. So we have a web app, we have iOS, and also a native Android app. all of which are completely open source. But this is a really important graph down at the bottom. So there had been attempts previously to use OpenStreetMaps to store this merchant data. But, and so there was a lot of bad data that we were inheriting. So we spent, and when I say we, I mean a community, organizers around the world, and a core team of 10 volunteers that have been slowly working through a huge backlog of data. So we started out with, what's that, like 7,000 or so unverified merchants. And so we have literally contacted 7,000 or attempted to contact 7,000 merchants to confirm that they're still alive and they still take Bitcoin. So that was a huge effort. We got some geyser funding recently, which enabled this final push, as you can see, where we got to 0 merchants that were using the legacy tags that we inherited. So a whole load of detail that I won't bore you with, but we worked very closely with OpenStreetMaps to get the correct tagging mechanism in OpenStreetMaps, because there was no concept of Lightning, for example, in OpenStreetMaps, so we had to work with them to do that. Okay, so this is it. For those not familiar, I'm a dark mode maxi, so you're seeing the dark mode here, but we also have light as well. So this is the map. You can see this is El Salvador. And every single merchant on the map has their own merchant page, which you can see here, well, pop-up pin, and then through to a merchant page. So it's particularly good if you're a small vendor selling pupusas or whatever. You've actually get a web presence on BTC Map, and I think we've got something like 100,000 unique visitors a month right now. So it gets visibility. And then, of course, what the merchant wants is, as Bitcoiners are passing through, if you're traveling, to attract those people to your store. So that's the merchant side. As I mentioned, we've got the community side as well. So what we're at, 366 so far. This is just a view on Europe. And you can see there are communities everywhere. We're putting some effort in over the next month or so to reduce these country communities down to more local ones, because the more localized we can be, of course, the better. So where are we at today? Well, as of Friday, when I put the stats together, we've got almost 9,000, sorry, 8,963 merchants. They're total, of which we have 8,210 merchants, and then the remainder are the ATMs. We have this up-to-date metric as well. So if you have been verified within the last 12 months, we deem you as being current. If you haven't been verified within that time, then you're deemed as out of date. So really pushing down those out-of-date locations to the communities so they can go and re-verify those guys. But yeah, up and to the right. So I always say the only two graphs that matter in Bitcoin is the hash price and the merchant adoption rate. And it's a real privilege to see those numbers come through. So we have a dashboard. You can see the URL there. Literally every day I wake up and there's like 10 more merchants, 20 more merchants. So you're seeing this adoption happening in real time. So it's a real privilege to see that. So this is not live yet. So this is just something we've been working on in the background. We'll be up on the website at some point soon, where we are adoption heat maps. So pretty self-explanatory. So this is a view on El Salvador. You can see, obviously, here in San Salvador with the Mi Primera community, a bit of a hotspot, obviously El Zonte. But I just want to give a big shout out to the guys at Berlin, who I think it's been only 6 months or so that I've been aware of that project, certainly. I was up there at the weekend. There's 70 plus merchants, and you can effectively live on Bitcoin in Berlin right now. So a big shout out to those guys, and that's why they've got like a massive orange glow up there. So just zooming out a bit, you can see Guatemala, and obviously El Salvador, and then further up into Mexico on a regional basis, hotspots. I'd say keep an eye on Cuba. So lots of activity there recently. So a friend of mine, Joe Nakamoto, and Paco were out there recently raising awareness and engaging with the locals there. So keep an eye there because they desperately need Bitcoin. More regionally here, so this is South America, obviously. Brazil is a hotspot right now. Lots of merchant adoption there. And if we take a look at Africa, most of the adoption we're seeing right now is down in South Africa with chains such as Pick n Pay, which is effectively the biggest supermarket down there accepting Bitcoin. Out through Asia, we've got hotspots in Thailand, but as you can see, India, China, more than half the world's population live there, and it's a bit of a dead zone right now in terms of merchant adoption. So it's going to be great to see that whole area start to glow orange when conditions allow. So Europe. Hotspots here, northern Italy. So it's one of the first Bitcoin communities, actually, circular economies, was up in the north of Italy, so you can see that they're shining bright there. And then more recently, Czech Republic, so Prague in particular, but the Czech Republic more generally, great levels of adoption there. And that's coming through kind of integration with like legacy point of sale systems, so you effectively light up an existing network overnight, rather than having to individually orange pill each merchant. The merchant sometimes doesn't even know they're accepting Bitcoin. So this is a global view. I just love these visualizations. So yeah, coming to the website at some point soon, so you'll be able to just pan and zoom around and get a feel, and then you can toggle on the actual individual markers to see. Spending's come in. All right, so let's get on to some stats around countries and communities. So this is new. We'll shortly be launching country communities, which are not kind of bound to any individual effort, but we can start to monitor merchant adoption on a per country basis. So let's take a look at some of these stats. So in terms of total merchants, and this is excluding ATMs, the US currently has the most number of merchants, closely followed by Brazil, Italy, and then Czech Republic. El Salvador down in 9th place right now. I will caveat all of this data is based on what we see on BTC maps, which is roughly right. But it is not the complete picture. So we will not be showing places that do exist, and we might be showing places that no longer exist, but roughly right. So that was total merchants, but now we talked about up-to-date merchants, so we place a high priority on recent verification. So we've just taken a look over the past 12 months verified. You can see the US is dropping mid-table. So they need to put some proof of work in and start verifying their merchants. And Brazil climbing right to the top. El Salvador still remaining in 9th. And each of these areas, of course, we can now work out merchant adoption via how big they are. So clearly, if you're tiny, you have a massive advantage here. So Gibraltar, for those that don't know, is a small British rock off the south coast of Spain. Absolutely shouldn't be British, but there we are. And they have, I don't know what the number is in Gibraltar off the top of my head, but maybe they have like 20 merchants or so. But they're tiny, so of course they're going to be up high. Isle of Man, off the coast of the UK, kind of not directly part of the UK, but Crown dependency. Some exchanges are based there, and there's lots of local adoption there as well, so they rate quite high. But no surprises, the small guys are at the top. We can recut that per capita, and of course there is a relationship between area and population, but it's not direct. So Isle of Man have actually come out way on top in terms of per capita merchant adoption. So let's take a look at communities. This is more interesting for me. So total merchants, so about 12 months ago, Bitcoin Island in the Philippines were actually our first kind of beta community. So we did a lot of work with those to refine some of the early functionality on the platform. So in terms of total merchants, they're top. And who have we got in? Bitcoin Berlin down at 8th place, which is phenomenal, again, given how young they are as a community. Prague doing really well. I want to also give a big shout out to Bitcoin Aqui, so Alante in Brazil, doing crazy numbers over a short period of time. So maybe 9 months or so that I've been personally aware of them. And again, you can live off Bitcoin entirely there with almost 200 merchants. But are they all up to date? So this is the graph that really matters because this shows the quality of the data, not just a quantity. So Volante doing really well there, Lugano doing really well, and I know that there's probably around 100 merchants that are in Lugano that are not on our map, so that would push Lugano probably up to the top, but we can only comment on the data that we have. And yeah, our friends at Berlin up at, what's that, 6th place in terms of up-to-date merchants. Yeah, and what else we have? Oh yeah, Rotan, so the Amatiage guys doing great work. But you see that the Bitcoin Island Philippine guys dropped from number 1 to number 9. And that's a function of just keeping the data up to date. They did a huge data upload approximately 1 year ago. So they've just dropped off a cliff in terms of up-to-datedness. So merchants per kilometer squared, if we take into account total merchants and up-to-date merchants, then Bitcoin Island, Philippines are up there. But the local communities here, Bitcoin Beach, Berlin, doing incredible work. Per capita, Bitcoin Withstand wins. So this is a tiny community in South Africa. I think the population is about 200-300 people, and they've got around 50 merchants or so. So they are way out ahead, just as a pure function of how small they are, but equally amazing work there. Okay, I'm coming to the last slide now. How can you guys help in the room? Join or start a local community. I run the one in Manchester, UK. For the first 1-2 sessions, it was literally me in a pub on my own, and these things build, and so these people will find, and now we've got a really strong community there. So just start a community wherever you're from. Back to the mission point, normalizing Bitcoin, cash or Bitcoin, always ask, and especially ask if you know that they're not going to accept Bitcoin, because it starts to plant the seed. What is Bitcoin? They might go and do some research. And then please contribute. So if you're a developer, we've got multiple platforms. We're open to accepting PRs and helping on that. But also become what we call a shadowy super tagger. So there's lots of data administration that we do on the back end. You don't have to be a coder to do that. If you like maps and you want to help with Bitcoin, then we could also always use additional eyes on the data that you could help out with. And of course, spread them. Use your Bitcoin. That's what it was invented for. All right, hand off to some of our socials. I'm going to be around the conference here for the, obviously for the next couple of days, and then down to Azonte. If you want to come talk to me about merchant adoption, community tools, or you just want some swag, I've got some BTC map stickers in my rucksack, so come find me and we can talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for all the work that your team is doing, Nathan. I think it is really, really useful for all the Bitcoiners all around the world.